So Just Bakery, if you don't know, is an employment training program for people with barriers to employment. And we work with people with all kinds of different barriers and backgrounds. But one of the biggest ones we see when it comes to employment is with our folks who are justice involved. There are laws around hiring to prevent discrimination, but we still see it all the time. The employers may not know the laws, they might ignore them, they might say they don't know them, and the potential employees don't understand their rights, so they don't know when to push back. The system also does a number on our justice involved folks, kind of breaking their spirit and making them believe, yeah, I'm a criminal, I deserve this. But that thinking is false. What we've done in the past does not define us. It's what we're doing now and trying to do for the future that counts. So at Just Bakery, we really work hard to help our participants change that thought process and see a future beyond their past. But we do still see these discriminations in hiring practices. And so that can be really hard too, because it confirms what they think they already know and kind of undoes that new thought process they're trying to build. So one of the first things that we can really do is to teach folks about what their rights are. So with that in mind, Byron, could you talk a little bit about the laws surrounding hiring practices and in particular protection for those who are justice involved?
Yeah, so one of the arrest and conviction record complaints are one of the largest complaints that we see in Equal Opportunities Division, Department of Civil Rights. And part of the issue is that one, the complainants aren't necessarily sure what their rights are, as you've identified. And the other issue is that the employers sometimes are operating under their own understanding. And so, and that usually their own understanding sometimes is in conflict with our ordinance in the city and what it says you can or should do based upon the ordinance. So, so we spent a lot of time correcting people about that and talking and educating folks about what our ordinance actually says. You know, the ordinance looks at, and from a simple standpoint, if someone has something within their criminal history or their arrest and conviction record, and it's within 3 years or less, an employer can look at those things and should be having a conversation with someone about that and seeing and making sure that the job that they're applying for doesn't have any reflection based upon that arrest and conviction record. Beyond those 3 years, they still can have that conversation, but it should not impact them at all to be considered for a job that they're qualified to do within the city of Madison. And so we get a lot of confusion about that. Now, on the flip side, we have some employers in the city who, a lot of the larger corporations, they really feel from their corporate office, they're telling them that even though they're in the city of Madison, they're going to follow their corporate policy, and it doesn't matter what the city of Madison's ordinance is, and they're not going to budge on those things. And so we have employers in our community that's the lane that they're going to be in, and we just have to deal with that as it comes. And so that is one of the realities that we have to face and deal with. We try to educate some of those larger employers and the corporations in our community and say, you know, is there some options of flexibility? Do we have some room to have some real good discussion about why we're doing this and what it means for folks, and maybe for you? Are there some opportunities that you might have where your corporate policy may not apply? And so we try to open up doors for conversations as many places as we can. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. So, but just for food for thought, I put those things out there that it is a real issue in our community. It is something that we are working very hard to try to fix. It is something that we still don't see as a real issue, as it still remains one of the issues of the top complaints that does come through our office.
The city of Madison is different than the national level, right? We actually tend to have more protections for people here, right?
The city of Madison has 28 protected classes. That is the most in the nation at the moment. we're number one. Yeah,
But
yeah,
still
right.
frustrating though.
Well, it can be because I and my team have to manage all that. But we have them. They're here for reasons to protect people who are being taken advantage of, or being discriminated, or being harmed in some way, and to protect them from those things. That's why they're here, and we want people to know about them and know that they exist. On our Department of Civil Rights website, we have 7 what I call these little quick informational videos that are 2 minutes or less that talks about things just like this. We talk about our arrested conviction record and what it means. We talk about our 28 protections, and we call them "Hey, did you know" videos. And so you could go to and you actually, they're on YouTube as well. So if you went to YouTube and typed in City of Madison, "Hey, did you know," and all those videos would come up, and people could see these quick little educational things about their rights and how to protect themselves and our protections in our community.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of really awesome resources at the Civil Rights Center. I've noticed, I think one of the most frustrating things is the city of Madison and even the surrounding ones have so many different policies when it comes to classes that are protected. And so it's so hard for people, because even if they go outside of the city of Madison, they don't have that same protection level that they do here.
That is correct.
And with all these big companies too, so hard for them. They're like, yeah, we'll take you, but then their HR is someplace else and they deny you for it. Very difficult. One of the things that we hear a lot is diversity. And I know we talked a little bit about this before, but we know that diversity is important. It increases the number of perspectives you have in your organization, backgrounds, that can help make the environment of the workplace better, more comfortable for more people. It also gives more opportunities because you're getting a lot more perspectives and different ideas than people in a certain box might not think about. But a big part of that is inclusivity, and that tends to be missing when we hear about diversity. We're all about hiring all kinds of different people, but then once they're in, they don't have that same experience. So Byron, do you want to talk a little bit about inclusivity? And then Todd, I'll have you talk a little bit about what American Family does with that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to unmute here. So when we talk about being inclusive, there's a lot of things. I'll talk about it from 2 perspectives, I guess, from an employer's perspective and then things and building in what that might mean to an employee as well. So first thing that we need to do is understanding our environments first. We need to pay attention to knowing our history and our background of our organization. What has it been like in the past for folks to come in that environment? What has it looked like? And what is the philosophy of what we would like to try to do and move to in the future? And what is our current situation? We want to talk about those things and have those really good conversations. Then we want to make sure that we have some really collect some really relevant data and analyze that information, looking at our organization's demographics, including the leadership of the organization, and making sure the demographics are matching with your leadership structure as well. Then we want to make sure that we're setting some targets and show some good accountability for the things that we want to do. We want to look at it right from the start. What is our hiring process like? What is the language that we're using in our hiring process? Are we still using words like you will be doing this, or he or she, and forgetting to put in they, just making sure that we're putting out language that also successfully attracts the diverse and equitable workforce. We want to look and talk about maybe strategies that attract new workers. What are we doing to actually bring in folks from other areas, or who have different thoughts, ideas, or look different than the majority of the folks that we have employed? How are we attracting folks and in our job announcements and our job postings, and making it appealing for other folks to apply. Then once we get some folks hired, we then need to talk about our onboarding process, right? So then we have to think about how are we going to be building bridges between this new employee and their new team and their new manager and supervisor and this new company or organization that they're with, and make them feel really welcomed and comfortable in that environment and in that workplace. You know, we have to always find ways to provide continuous support for folks for at least 6 months, sometimes depending on the role, even a year, to support folks in an onboarding process environment to get them acclimated and make somebody actually feel welcome as they're coming into what some people perceive as my workspace. You came into my workspace, right? So, but we want everybody to have opportunities to achieve goals and be successful in whatever they do. And then we also want to make sure that we're just, the obvious is making sure that we're just saying no to discrimination in our workplace and own that, right? So take those steps and say, we're owning that we're not going to discriminate against people in our own workplace at all for no reason whatsoever. We're going to allow it. So, and then, and as employees and as managers, like for myself, making sure that we're promoting and pushing for policies that advance race, gender, and opportunities for equity for all folks.
I think the language has a bigger impact than people really realize too. It's little changes of words can even open up the door for people. And what you're saying about attracting new workers, I think is something big too, because I always wonder when I look at places and the numbers that they have, where exactly are they looking? I was working with one of the colleges and seeing even their teachers, the lack of diversity going on there and the lack of diversity within their students. It's like, where are you looking for these people? Where are you advertising? Who are you contacting? How is there such a big gap? So I think that's a really important aspect to think of, as where else can we post this job so that we are getting the bigger population. So Todd, you've talked a little bit about American Family previously, not today, but how you guys kind of use inclusivity, and because it's not just about hiring people on, but also making sure that they are part of the organization and the work that you're doing. So how does American Family tie in this idea of inclusivity?
Yeah, so I think like Byron might have mentioned, and you previously, it starts at the top. I mean, from our leadership group on down, this is a part of our culture. This is a part of who we are at American Family. Having a social impact, we made an investment years ago, many years ago, that was going to be an important part of what we do. How we impact the community and what we stand for. And so sometimes you'll see stuff from the CEO, was Jack Salzwedo and now Bill Westrate, that might sound almost political, right? That sound a little bit controversial to some people, but we know we have a good feeling for what's right. So when we see something in the social justice or the in the community that we think is important to stand behind, we do that, and we do that with our investments, with our money. Recently, we contributed to Alex G's efforts and building up that community. But it's not just one area. We try to do it across the whole area. And I've been there 15 years, and I've seen the changes in the diversity at the top, in the people that represent the different divisions across American Family. There's more women, there's more people of color that are in the C-suite and that are are part of that, and representation is a huge part of inclusivity. So if you don't see somebody that looks like you, it's a lot harder to believe that people are standing up for the rights and of the people that are previously discriminated against in other places or other things. So to see people of color, to see different ethnic groups, to see women different in leadership roles is important. And we've worked really hard to do that. That's part of our goals each year. That's part of the metrics that are measuring when we do hiring. So every recruiter gets measured on how much they're putting into the pools of people that are hiring. So that there's got to be at least, you know, a certain percentage of people in the pools that they hire, and so that's so it starts at the top and it goes all the way through the organization. And then we do things like when you talk about onboarding and people having places to go. So we have business resource groups. We have 9 different business resource groups that cover lots of different ethnic classes and gender and LGBTQ. So we have these different resource groups, and they are actually very influential within American Family itself. So there's presentations that they put on. They're at the table in discussions about different things with the leadership group. They participate in activities throughout the year. They're a real presence within the organization. They're not just off in the corner someplace, just having groups of people just talking with themselves. They're actually involving the whole community. We also have, so one of our divisions is called Inclusive Excellence. So that is just about making people feel more included. So their whole mission that of that group is to work on the inclusion part of diversity and inclusion. So it's not enough to hire and get ourselves more diverse, but it's also then to retain those people, make them feel welcome. Everybody has to feel a part of that mission, not just one group or one area. And I think that all the efforts, you know, you could just feel it within our culture, within our so we have social media with that's just within the company. And so when somebody posts something, you know, it's all about the positive aspects of bringing in more inclusive people. And we have employees all across the country, so that can be a challenge at times to you know what people are used to. And kind of like what Byron said and what you said earlier about Madison being one thing, and then the other areas that we are in being something else. But we make it because of all the efforts that we have. I think everybody knows that that's part of what our culture is, and you need to be a part of that culture.
How do you guys, or where do you post your jobs to make sure that you're recruiting a diverse amount of people?
So we have our own job boards, americanfamily.com/careers, where we post, but it isn't just posting. We recruit from LinkedIn, Indeed, but we also have National Black MBA. We have Prospanica. We have Grace Hopper, or so we have different nonprofits and organizations that we partner with that bring us candidates of a diverse nature. And so the previous group that I was in was called Diversity Recruiting Strategy. And so part of that strategy is to build these partnerships with these diverse communities and to have those database of employees that they have entered into our hiring pools, along with the LinkedIn candidates and the Indeed candidates that might have, so they can compete there.
And
Because if we just hired just from the LinkedIn, we would get 60% white males,
Right.
that would be it. And we would be, 40% would be everything else. But if you go to National Black NBA, you're going to get 95% people of color. And so if you reach out to those different groups in those different databases, include them in your mix, you're going to have a much more diverse pool to hire from. We also do that with our colleges. We recruit at HBCUs. We don't just recruit at University of Wisconsin-Madison. We go all over, and we specifically target the areas where we think we're going to get more diversity. So we target schools in Houston and in Georgia and other places where we feel like we can get a more diverse group of people than just Madison, Wisconsin.
And it's nice that you guys being national too really opens up a lot of doors there. But I was really curious, those other areas, especially for any employers who are watching, who are like, I would like to recruit a more diverse workforce.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about your justice involved folks, so hiring and supporting them through the job?
So I've been lucky enough for the last couple of years to be involved in one of the partners that we have is called Next Chapter, and they're out of San Francisco, but they recruit justice involved people from that are either, so they partner with other groups as well. That group partners with other groups to find people in technology that are skilled, that happen to be incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. So they partner with those different groups, and they have training courses that help educate people that are interested, that might be in the system, to learn a technical skill like JavaScript. And so we've hired from Next Chapter to bring people in. We have an apprenticeship program where they come in and they get acclimated to American Family for 5 months. And then, so we've hired 3 of those apprentices. And at the end of the 5 months, then we plan on, if they want to work at American Family and they've gelled well with the team, then we will hire them full-time as employees. So that's all on the technology side for that one. I know that we're also starting other programs, and we're just in the design phase, if you will. We're just starting to learn about where those are going to be. So there's going to be more to come. But we've decided not to just kind of sit back and take that in, but to reach out and try to make it happen instead.
Which I think is really important too, that understand it's an active choice.
Yes.
You get to choose who you're hiring and really being intentional with that. What kind of things go into the acclimation period?
So it's almost like an internship. So like any other, like if you had a college student, and it's just, okay, so you might know a technical skill, but you don't know the technology that we're going to be using at American Family. So the 5 months is kind of like that internship where you're learning all about the work that you're going to be doing. You're doing the work that you're going to be doing, and continuing to learn from mentors and your teammates on how you can get more skilled in those areas.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's important too, because that transition, no matter what, it's a lot. And if you've been incarcerated for a significant period of time and all of a sudden you're let out, there's a lot you're already going through.
The interesting thing about the Next Chapter candidates that, so I was involved in all of the interviews, and I've also been involved in hundreds of intern interviews and recent college graduate interviews. And I would put those Next Chapter candidates above most of the college graduate and intern candidates that I've interviewed over the years. They just were on point. They were answering the questions. They were well prepared. So and you could tell the desire that they wanted to make a change in their lives. They wanted to make this successful. And I think that's one of the things that's going to give us a competitive advantage in the future, is that we're looking for talent that wants to work, that wants to do the job, and is willing to understand what it is to be a continuous learner.
Yeah, because a lot of them, that's what's happening, right? Like,
Yeah.
And making that decision too. So when people are incarcerated, they have to decide, do I want to do something different? And it's a lot of work to put that in. So I think having a place like American Family that's open to that is huge, because it's not just like factories are great, but sometimes people don't want to work in factories. And a lot of times that's the only places that'll hire them. So it's such a great opportunity.
Yeah, and technology is not rocket science. I mean, you can learn a programming language in a relatively short time. And we've proven that not just with the Next Chapter program, but also with IC Stars in Milwaukee, where we hire people that don't have a degree. They might have gone to school for a little bit here or there, or somehow they developed an interest in technology. They go through a 4-month program with IC Stars, and they learn. So that's another diversity group that we work with to try to bring in more diversity. So to me, diversity isn't a passive hiring thing. It's a active hiring thing, where you have to go reach out to the different communities to bring the diversity in.
Yeah, definitely. So I really like that you guys hold your recruiters accountable too by checking those numbers. I think that's important too, because so many times it's easy to kind of blame someone else for, well, we didn't have it, but it's active, like you said, actively seeking out people who fit into that. All right. So Byron, I know you had talked about the highest discrimination complaints that you guys get. Was that accurate? It's the most that you get are from justice involved folks?
One of them, the largest complaints historically in the city for the that I see still, number one is race. Disability is sometimes a close second. Age is another one, but arrest and conviction record are up there pretty regularly all year long. But the top three always tend to be race, age, race, disability, and age, and they kind of move around. But race is always number one.
Yeah,
has been for a long time.
Which is sad. You'd think we'd be in a different place this day and age, but what kind of things do people complain about with the discrimination, like specifically, I guess?
Well, that takes me back to organizations evaluating their policy, procedures, patterns, and practices. We need to make sure that we are looking at those things regularly, making sure that we don't have anything in our organization that could be harmful or even insensitive to others in the workplace. We see things about typically surrounding those particular items where people feel like they were treated differently, they were harmed because of how they were treated. And in some cases, they then lodged a complaint to their employer and then were retaliated against for lodging that complaint. And so those are things that, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to. I don't know what we can do, but to continue to offer the trainings that we offer to the community and to employers to just help combat some of those concerns that come through. Because some of these things are just literally folks didn't know or didn't understand, or was communication issues, or, and a lot of times in our process, when someone lodges a complaint, the first thing that we do before it goes through an investigative process is we schedule it for mediation. And so we then first try to resolve differences by having a conversation first to see if we can understand how a person may have been offended by something or felt that they were discriminated against. Not saying that it did or did not occur, but at least having that healthy conversation to see if we can come to some terms of agreement, working through the situation from this point forward or whatever. And so everything gets scheduled through mediation first. It's a voluntary process, but in doing this, and ever since we started doing that, 51% of our investigative cases we have been resolved because of this process. So we've cut our investigative process in half by introducing a mediation program into our complaint process and structure.
I think what Byron said there was really important, the educational part of that, because I don't think corporations intentionally on the whole, I mean, intend to be discriminatory or intend to do things wrong, but they might be misinformed or they might not understand everything. A good example of that is we had a vice president of HR who made this claim that said, well, we wouldn't hire that person because of this offense. And the lawyer so we have a really good lawyer in our company that does the hire that deals with all the hiring and stuff. And she's only about 5'2", but she stands up and she goes, yeah, we would. We already have. We've done that quite a bit. So because we followed the laws long before, we didn't have a check the box, and we didn't have things that were discriminatory against people. But even the senior leadership didn't understand, weren't educated on what we would hire for and what we wouldn't hire for. But the lawyer said, oh yeah, we do that. We unless it's job related, back to what we said earlier, we're going to hire that person. You have to, in our process, we're checking after somebody's been given an offer. So we're not doing our background checks until after the offer is given. So we already know that person is qualified. So it has to be a very strong case of something actually the crime would be, exactly with the job that they were doing that would so 99% of people would be hired the way we approach it.
I think that's great. Like, actually decide before you run it, because we've even had participants who they go through everything. They might even start working at a job, and then all of a sudden someone runs a background check and they've been there a month or more. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, you can't work here anymore because of this. Like, but you already hired me and I've been working.
Yeah, I feel that's awful. And I think that's where we as a society need to educate each other better on that, and not allow that to persist, because that, how are we expecting change? How are we expecting people to be able to grow from mistakes that they've made?
Yeah, it just keeps the cycle going.
And we're not providing the opportunity to do that.
Right. So Byron, I was curious, how many employers do you have that take your trainings? I know I used to have you guys come into the bakery and actually do the trainings with us, which I loved. And whenever you're back on it, I want you back. But how many employers do you see who actually?
Oh, we still do the trainings and do them now. We've never stopped. So, so I look at it in two areas. We have a program called our Certified Community Partners program, and that's where we go out and talk to community-based organizations that work with folks who might be experiencing employment, housing, or public accommodations discrimination, and give them some guidance as to, if you're working with your clientele and you hear that they've been taken advantage of or maybe discriminated against, here's how you can help them. And so we have 40 or 50 organizations in the city now that have gone through the Certified Community Partners program. There's over 300 individuals just in that has gone through that program. In addition to that, our education, training, and outreach, our goal for 2021 was to reach about 1% of Madison's population to get close to 2,000 people as we could. We actually got over 2,400 individuals that we actually were able to get in front of in our employment training and education outreach stuff. So I'm excited to see what this new year brings, because the more folks that get educated on this, the more folks we get in front of, the more individuals who know that, hey, this is not allowed and it can't happen to me as an employee, or for an employer to go, I don't think we should do that. I remember taking this training and I don't think we can do that. So the more we get that, the better I think we are overall.
Yeah, definitely. There was a question submitted for you, Byron, as well. So many companies have outsourced their background checks to private companies, and the local recruiter, HR person isn't aware of what offenses are being screened out. Is there any way to require a company to disclose what they're screening out? It feels like it's a way for companies to deny responsibility for discrimination based on conviction history. Not getting into the issue of racial disparities in the justice system and how it relates to employment discrimination based on conviction history. I think we might have lost Byron here for a second. It's frozen. Oh no.
Yeah.
He's so good. We got to get him back.
Yes. Oh, hopefully he'll just have to log back in here.
Yeah.
Maybe we can swing to Todd. Are you a partner? Is AmFam a partner with
The city?
the city and what Byron has been talking about?
I guess I don't know specifically. I know that I have to believe that we're going above and beyond what the city would require, just from what I've been able to gather from talking with our legal team and the people within the Inclusive Excellence Group and our outreach partners. So I'm hoping that would be the case, that we exceed whatever the requirements are there. And I know our educational, so we've got these online classes that you can take, and I know that there's a lot of education in that area. So I don't know if it's as good as the education that Byron provides, but I know it's really good education. So I'm definitely going to check out the education that the city of Madison provides and see if ours is comparable to that as well.
It sounds like there's a lot of overlap, which is good. Everything you've been saying, I'm like, yep, that's accurate. That's accurate.
Yep.
All right,
Sorry,
Byron.
I don't know what happened. Everything just went blip. So yeah.
Good to have you back, Byron.
Thank you. Yeah.
We missed you. We missed you.
We were just hoping. We're like, oh no, I hope he comes back.
Yeah.
All right, you want me to run through this question again, or do you got
Please,
it?
thank you. Please,
Okay.
thank you.
So many companies have outsourced their background checks to private companies, and then the local recruiters or HR person isn't actually aware of what offenses are being screened out. Is there a way to require a company to disclose what they are screening out? Because it feels like it's a way for the companies to deny responsibility for discrimination based on conviction history.
Yeah, that's something that we find that's problematic. And a lot of times when, in not all cases, but in some cases, when we have employers that use other folks to do those checks, if there is an issue that comes up, we almost have to open up a complaint with both organizations, with the employer and the organization that did the background as well. And and that can go anywhere, actually. Making the requirement for an employer to do that, probably not. So they can use those organizations if they deem that that's what works best for them.
So in that case, are they generally saying to the HR because how can an HR company come in and be like, oh, you say you'll hire these people, but I'm not going to, so we're going to deny them? Like, how can they get away with that without permission?
In most cases, they will ask what the company's policies or rules are first and will follow that guidance. So I haven't really seen it in reverse where a recruiting organization will say, well, this is our practice and we only recruit these kinds of folks or people. And I really haven't seen that. I regularly see, though, where a recruiting agency that's supporting another organization will say, what is your policy? What is, tell us what you need from us to do. Now, sometimes that communication gets muddied a little bit and there's confusion as to what they're supposed to do and not to do a lot of times. And that's usually in that confusion is when usually we get brought in. So.
Yeah. It just feels shady.
I wouldn't think that it's kind of like the company should still be responsible, right? So they're still accountable no matter what, however they're hiring. So if they hired an agency that didn't go along with their policies, they would have to get rid of them because they could be held accountable for any mistakes that they made. So I can't imagine that scenario playing out for very long.
Hopefully not, because it's just this weird loophole. It seems like, oh, it wasn't us, it was our external hiring department. Yep, bunch of blame. I had another question here for Byron. So I'm a little confused on that one, Laura, sorry. What size is the companies are? I think it made sense when you sent it, and then we...
Yeah. Go ahead. I was just, as you were talking about your employer partners that you're working, training, Byron, I'm curious as to kind of the size of different companies, because I know that it's probably easier maybe for like a larger company like AmFam to be putting some of these things into place. And I'm wondering if you work with small companies who don't really have the capacity for this learning and education piece.
So yes, we do smaller organizations up to large corporations at their annual conferences or training centers where we can have anywhere up to 500-600 people. We've done that too. So we've even done one-on-ones with individuals, and because they are the only person in their organization and they're part of the HR or whatever, and they want to learn, so we'll go do the one-on-one with them as well. All of the trainings that we offer, and you'll see that when we get done, I'm going to share those resources. We do a training every month at the job center the first Friday of the month, and it's free for employers and residents to go in and participate in. We have also other trainings that we offer on our website related to discrimination, equity in the workplace, and those kinds of things. And all of those trainings are free, but we do have some specialty trainings, some specialized trainings where those are actual classes of that they go into depth. They're like 4 hours each training. They take a half a day, and those trainings, there is a small fee associated for those trainings.
I know that the trainings you guys offer are free. Are there additional supports that you offer for places that are trying to grow? Like, is there any legal advice? So something we talked about with like evaluating all your stuff. Do you guys offer any supports for that, or is it kind of up to the business themselves?
We don't do any legal advice because the Department of Civil Rights, Equal Opportunities Division is completely neutral in everything that we do. So we're neither for a respondent or a complainant or anything, but we are for justice and making sure that people are being treated correctly in their work environments. So having said that, we have in the past, when an employer calls us and said, hey, is there any way somebody could take a look at our marketing materials, our advertisement materials, our promotional stuff, and making sure that we're being equitable in what we're saying, and because we're not really sure. Can you offer some guidance on that? Sure. If somebody wants us to come out or have us do an evaluation over their work rules and their policies and practices, and making sure that what those look like, and making sure they're in good shape. We've done those things for employers as well too. So minus any legal stuff, those are kinds of things that we can help folks work through and navigate through, or point them someplace where they can, if they need more in depth, where they can go to get some more in-depth help.
I didn't know that you guys did that. So that's really exciting to hear, actually. And hopefully people really utilize that, because like we said, language is important. And if you don't see the message that you're sending, you're not going to have the response you're looking for. I had something else on that and now I've totally forgotten. Oh yeah. Could you talk a little bit about so you mentioned the mediation. So if the mediation doesn't work, which it does sound like over 50% is working through that mediation, but what's the steps after that if it doesn't work?
Sure. So if mediation is successful, then cases usually are done at that point. If mediation is not successful, then it gets scheduled for an investigation. Our investigations take anywhere between 90 and 120 days to come up with an initial determination. And at that point, if there's probable cause for discrimination, then it gets scheduled for what's called a conciliation, which is a fancy way of mediating a case, except now the employer has been found that there's probable cause for discrimination. So there's a little bit more skin in the game at that point. But if there's no probable cause found at the end of the investigation, then that case is done. But if somebody disagrees with that, it can be appealed, right? As all things can be, right?
Right.
But then we go through the conciliation stage for a case that's found probable cause. That usually gets conciliated out. It usually comes to me for that stage of conciliation. If I cannot settle that case and we can't come to an agreement or come to a settlement agreement, then I have to schedule that case for a pre-hearing conference with our judge, our administrative law judge, and then we host and schedule hearings just like regular court system. It looks just like court. And so everybody comes to their day or days in court to argue their case and their situation with a judge who has the only authority to determine if discrimination has actually occurred in that situation. And so the investigators can determine if there's probable cause, but the judge is the one that has the actual authority to say, yes, this actually did or did not, based upon the Wisconsin's law. So, or our ordinance specifically. So,
Okay. What kind of things go in? Like, what do you look at in an investigation?
So we ask, our investigations are done by questionnaires. And so when a complaint comes in, we're asking questions of the complainant and the respondent both at the same time, and giving them both a time frame to respond back to us in a reasonable manner, so we can look at what those responses are and determine an outcome for that case. So we're asking all the questions that we can think of to determine, did this potentially happen or not? And so the investigators are trained to ask very detailed questions about, again, policy and procedures, patterns and practices. What do you have in place? what notice was given to the employer at the time frame, or did any notice was given at all? Who knew what, when did they know it, what did they do once they knew, right? So all of these things and all these questions are being asked of folks to determine, yeah, this story, based upon the evidence that is being received or collected, which we will also collect, you know, whatever somebody submits, video evidence, camera evidence, whatever, all of that goes into parts of the investigation if it's necessary and warranted, right? Because not all cases have that information. So, but those are the things that we ask for, and those are things that we look at. It's still structured in under those items that I've been talking about this whole time. So, yeah.
One of the things that always comes up, so I would let our participants know, and I hope this is still true, but if I understand it correctly, if you request from an employer why you were denied employment, they have, like in writing, they have to provide that. Maybe it's not as have to anymore, but something the participants always ask is, why don't they lie about it? Or won't they just lie about it? And so I'm kind of curious how often, like, is there a way around that? Do you generally see patterns or something that can show?
Yeah, we'll ask for that stuff anyway. So if a person's denied, we're going to want to ask to see what was the reason for that denial. So if somebody says, well, it came back on a background, okay, well, show us that background and show us what it says. If it comes back and says, well, you know, it's in our company handbook that we don't hire folks with X, Y, or Z. Well, we want to see that written in the handbook and see, does it really say that? And, you know, so we're gonna ask, and we have the authority to get anything we ask for. So if we need to ask, we will.
I think that authority is a big part too, because once you guys are asking, it's like next level. So they have to actually be accountable for what's happening, which is really important.
Todd, I'm wondering if you could speak on, and maybe I don't want to put you on the spot, maybe you don't know, but is there kind of like some of what Byron is talking about in-house at American Family Insurance, like a mediation process or
somebody that's denied a job or something, or?
No, I guess past the, like, once they are an employee but have issues with any type of, like, feel like they're being discriminated against, or are there ways that-
I guess I don't know a lot about the discrimination. I've been a manager there for 10 years. What I can say is it's not easy to get somebody fired. So it's not like we're doing a lot of that. There's quite a burden on the management team to have a long written out incidents, and you know, first you have to do verbal warning. So there's a whole process of, you know, making sure that we're giving everybody the opportunity to succeed. So that's the part that I'm familiar with, is having gone through that process a few times, and what it takes to work through that process, and making sure that people have the opportunity to continue is quite detailed. And there's been times when I said, well, you know, they're not showing up, they're not doing things, and it's still hard to work them out. So I can't imagine that the discrimination things would go over too well in our environment. I just you know, and I don't know. They're probably, you know, that we, just like any other company, and we're a big company, we have good and bad people throughout the organization. I would say we have a lot more good than bad, but you know, so I'm sure that there's been cases, and I'm sure that things have happened, but just from the performance evaluations and the processes that we go through, you have to have your things in a row if you're a manager trying to work somebody out of the organization.
Sometimes be frustrating, but it's good because you don't want people to just be able to willy-nilly, nope, you're gone because you did this, or
Yeah,
you're struggling with this. So
yeah, the documentation's it has to be very good, and it has to be intentional, and our management training goes along with that. So people understand that the process that people will have to go through to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to represent themselves better.
right. This is a good question. So probably Byron, but Todd, if you have any input as well. So she's wondering if in looking at an employer's affirmative action plan as required for businesses contracting with the city, is it common to find employers using LTE employment or contractual employment as a way to avoid benefits like paid time off, insurance, etc.?
Well, that's a great question. And I don't have any of those numbers known off the top of my head, but it is something that I would be willing to look into to find out with how the affirmative action tabulates that information, and I can find that out because it's a really fabulous question, and I think I'd like to kind of know more about that myself. Could that happen? Does that happen? Very possible.
Yeah. I can speak a little bit towards that, not at American Family, but at a previous employer in the Madison area. Hiring people as interns and keeping them on for years beyond their internship, or I've seen that happen. And to me, that definitely feels wrong. You're giving somebody an opportunity when they first start, but there comes a point where it becomes abusive, where you're taking advantage of that. And I don't know that it's necessarily that they were trying to avoid putting them or giving them benefits. It's more about they didn't want the head count to be on their roles. So that's one of the things that where there's a lot of contract hiring is because that they'll set their budget limits at the employee head count, but they don't necessarily have the same limitations on the contractor vendor relationship budgets. So those are easily changed compared to changing somebody's head count.
I didn't even think about it like that.
I have seen, actually, I'm in a current case, a very large one that involves a contractor, a sub, and then the sub of the sub. And the sub of the sub was doing whatever they wanted to do, where the contractor had no clue what was happening. And the person in the middle was trying to navigate what was taking place. The folks who were working for the sub of the sub, working for the contractor sub and the general contractor, there is a complaint of discrimination, but it's connecting all of them to the issue. And this is going to be very interesting to see how this pans out. And part of it is these folks were immigrant workers and in our community, and they were complaining about, being told that they weren't employees, they were 1099, they were, contract employees, and as the question here I alludes to, was this the sub of the sub doing this because they didn't want to have to pay benefits or make them full-time employees because of whatever reason? This will be fleshed out in this case and in that investigation that we're doing and having those conversations. I had to actually bring in the state of Wisconsin and their wage and equity department, as well as Department of Labor, to work in this with me because I think it's that involved. So, and involves lots of folks making the same type of complaint. So these things do happen.
And is 1099, is that contract? Okay. Yeah, I feel like using that LTE, is it more complicated than to find this kind of stuff? Is that a way that they can hide what they're doing?
I feel like it's it would seem like it would be a little bit harder because they're not a direct employee a lot of times. And so you have to go through a couple different layers, like Byron was alluding to get at where the problem might be. So I do think that it makes it harder for investigators or for people to figure out, first of all, what's going on.
And I know we had a participant who was hired on with the city, loved the job. It was LTE. And then once their time was up, he tried to reapply because he loved that job. That's what he wanted to do. And then they tried to say that because of his background, he couldn't do the work anymore, which it didn't make any sense because he had done an entire LTE thing like the time. And then all of a sudden now he's not good enough to work with them. And his crimes had really nothing to do with what he was doing. And he didn't want to pursue a discrimination case because it's disheartening when you have been through it and been through it and been through it and told no and denied over and over again. It's hard to kind of muster that energy to go through it again. But it was just so hard in my position to see him having found something that he wanted to do and keep doing and then have it taken away from him. And yeah, so the LT, it's like, yeah, that's not okay. It's so frustrating. There's just so many, it seems like there's so many loopholes, but there shouldn't be, especially in Madison, because we have so many protected classes and we have so many resources. So, I mean, you've kind of mentioned resources, Byron, a bit, but can you talk a little bit about, as far as employees, what kind of resources you guys, is there anything besides the trainings and then the investigations? You have a lot. I shouldn't just say just those, but
Yeah, the trainings are a big thing right now in supporting employers or community-based organizations. And again, the free trainings that we offer at the Job Center, each month it's a different topic. So folks want to get connected to that, they just have to email us and we'll get folks on a list. Right now, trainings are at the Job Center, they're all Zoom, so folks can participate from wherever they work from or whatever media tool they want to use. But another resource that I think is also very helpful for employees, or realistically, this tool is available to anybody in the entire city, including everybody on this call. With the Department of Civil Rights partnered with Madison College to build, and a lot of other folks connected. We just had a small part in helping build the free legal clinic, which is at the South Madison and the Goodman South campus there. And so right across from Central Hispano. And so that resource is a very good resource available to anyone in the community that needs legal help, needs to talk to a lawyer or someone that can't necessarily afford one. You can go there, and that's what it's designed for folks who found themselves in a situation, don't know what to do, and need to talk to someone about whatever situation that could come up. They actually, I'm trying to see if I can look real quick here what kinds of things that I want to be able to tell you that they do. I got a list here. Put on my glasses so I can actually read. So just some of the things, if someone has issues with tenant and landlord disputes, they can go talk to them. Driver's license restoration, they can go talk to them. Child support, family law, mortgage issues, criminal records, public benefits, immigrant status situations. So this free legal clinic is set up to offer help to folks who need it for just about anything that they can think of. And we have lots of attorneys and law offices and legal support teams from all over the city that are volunteering their time to support folks. And so the number, if you folks want to call and get information, is 608-243-4200. That's their direct number to the free legal clinic. Otherwise, you can go to their website, the Madison South Campus, at the Goodman South Campus there, and they have a place to click and schedule for an appointment. But you can call and get more information, or call and ask somebody, hey, I have this issue. Is there somebody there I can schedule an appointment with to come talk to? And they'll get you taken care of.
That's such a great resource, because the legal help especially is really hard to come by. And I know we have a lot of people who need that legal support, but then they have no idea where to go or who to turn to. So such a great resource. Thank you.
I placed the link to that in the chat, so if anyone wants to.
All right. Do any of our other participants have questions? Okay. So quite a few years ago, the Workers' Rights Center, which is now Workers' Rights Wisconsin, had a directory of restaurants that were fair employers. Are either of you familiar with any similar directories in Wisconsin for employers in general?
I am not, but the Workers' Rights Center is one of our CCPs, our community partners as well. So I want to talk to them about that and see if there's an updated version, or we can get one updated and then look more into other stuff like that. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, that would be a fantastic thing to have for folks.
If you have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat. At this point too, if you feel like you want to put your video on and unmute yourself and be in conversation with us, that would be perfectly fine too. We welcome you joining.
So I guess as we are getting down to it, and if anyone does have questions, please give them to us. What are kind of your guys' final message for folks when it comes to hiring and making sure that it's fair and how they're doing it? Like, what would be your message to employers who either are looking to do a little bit more with this, or making sure that they are doing it the right way?
So for me, again, keep hammering at identifying and evaluating policy, procedures, patterns, and practices. I would say make sure that all of your criteria for decision making is written and clear and in place, and all of the leadership understands what that is for the organization. I would say strategically and authentically include diverse voices in that decision-making process. Look at what equity tools that you have to help guide your decisions. And if you don't have some, think about creating some. And then maybe watch out for, tokenism though, in your environment. A lot of times organizations, in their efforts to do the correct thing, by recruiting people from underrepresented groups for a task that helps the organization's appearance and to show that they really want to be all inclusive and they're all in and this is special to them. But sometimes we put folks in a situation that can make them uncomfortable by asking them to lead these folks from these underrepresented groups to lead that charge or that initiative without really understanding how it might make them feel being asked to do that. So, just that's some things that I would consider. For best practices, I guess for workers would be to, one, educate, know your rights, take action when it's appropriate, and take appropriate action. I'll say it and add that too. Know your employer's policies and procedures, and if there's any agreements of things, get those agreements in writing. Document, take notes regarding who told you what, when they told you, and what they told you, and just make sure you have some notes that you can refer to. And then there's the issue of if something does come up and does occur on the workplace that you feel that is unfair, or you need to let the employer know, make sure you're letting the employer actually really know. Filing a complaint is totally okay and everybody has the right to do so. But if that employer never got any notice that there was a problem, they can't work on, solve, or try to fix something that they never knew anything about or had no knowledge of that it actually existed. And so that's unfair to an employer to put them in that position. So,
especially talking about like what we talked about today too, where one person might be saying something, but it's not actually the policy. It's not actually what they're supposed to be saying. So like communication is a big part. And the hardest thing is the conversation can be uncomfortable. So you have to somehow figure out how do you have this uncomfortable conversation.
So I see Lauren has a question for me, I think.
Yep.
So we have hired people, from what I understand, from Justine. The partnership that I described before with Next Chapter was specifically for IT developers in using Next Chapter. I think we're planning on expanding that. I don't know if it's specifically local or if we could instruct Next Chapter, because they go across the country and work with different institutions to hire people. That might be a possibility. I also know that there's a lot of things going on because of some of the successes that we've had so far, that things are going to continue to grow for the hiring folks that were formerly incarcerated. So I feel like that's an area where we're going to continue to develop. And we have some really strong leaders in the organization that are very supportive of that. So that reassures me that we're going to be doing more. I can't right now say that there's a specific program for specific types of groups. I just know that through the Institute and through our different partnerships, that we're continually hiring from lots of different segments of the community.
Yeah, and I know we've been working with you guys on our mock interviews, which has been huge. I love that. It's just been so great for the participants to actually work with an HR department and really get that real feel. But I'm always hoping too, you guys will find somebody be like, you know what? Hey, Jacqueline, we need this person on our team. Can you encourage them to apply? So yeah, you guys keep doing really awesome work. Todd, do you have any final thoughts or words for employers or employees who are looking to be more fair in their hiring practices?
Yeah, I think I hope that we're setting an example. We're trying to be involved in our communities that we work in, and trying to make the case that that hiring more inclusively, more diversely is a business proposition that only benefits each business. And we've got evidence that shows that the more diverse we are, the more profitable, the better, more productive we are. So I think if employers do their research, they're going to find that they're going to be better off by doing that. If you look at the latest generation of folks coming out of college, they want employers that are more diverse. They want people that understand the value of community impact, and they want to be associated with that. So if you're not doing that, you should try to get on track to do that. Do the research and find out that it is profitable to be hiring more diverse people, to be looking at ways to make yourself more inclusive. So I think it's a value proposition that's just going to continue to grow. And so if you haven't done it, do it. As far as employees, I think talking to people that work at different places that you're thinking about working at to try to get a feel for that is one way to understand what it might be like to work there. Try to find out as much information. Sometimes when you're really looking for a job, you just kind of want to get that job no matter what, but it might be good to count to 10 and try to find out if that's really a place that's going to help you with your aspirations, or is that a place that's just going to make you feel worse about yourself and about the whole situation. So sometimes holding out for something better, even if it's a few weeks or months later, it might be worth it in the long run.
Or even taking that job that's not your future, but have something while you keep looking. Like, it's not the end all once you
get your foot in the door at a place that is reputable, that you want to work in. Because once you're in an organization, it's a lot easier to navigate through the organization towards the job you want.
Yeah, and I think talking to the people who work there is huge too, because you can read whatever you want. Like, if the employers are posting stuff, of course they're not going to post negative things about themselves. But the people who have worked there, they know what it feels like. They know what's actually happening.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Laura, did we have any questions on Facebook at all? I don't know if we have anyone tuning in, but.
We don't have any questions. Carmela is on Facebook, so hi, Carmela.
Hi, Carmela.
So she just once, when I asked the question about small businesses and how they navigate this, she made the comment that says, I think small isn't an excuse, and looking at Justine as a equal opportunity employer and also Short Stack, I think, are good examples of smaller organizations that are doing this work. So that is a salient point that I wanted to raise here as well. Well, this has been such a, actually, Jacqueline, do you have any kind of final comments that you want, or are we ready to?
I guess it's just kind of going through the same things that have been said, but not focusing so much on what someone's done, but really looking at the person and what they can bring to your organization. Like, everyone's going to bring different things, and being open to hiring a diverse group and then also supporting them. So not just like Byron is saying, not tokenism, it's bringing people in and then making sure that they're home there, and also giving them the voice. Like, it's nothing to just be a number on the board. If you don't have a voice to help make decisions and actually make changes within a business or an organization, then it's not really doing a whole lot of good. It's part of that inclusivity, is giving people that seat at the table and making sure that they're heard. But yeah, I'm just hoping that this touches with some more employers and makes them see that this can be done and your business isn't going to fail because of this. Like, you can hire people who've been just as involved and be better off, not just continue doing well. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Todd and Byron. Thank you for being in conversation, and Jacqueline, awesome job. I am so excited to get these going again. So they're going to be monthly conversations. I will just put a plug in. Next month's is talking about mentoring and the importance of mentoring in our community as we kind of re-up finally our Mentoring Connections program for kids impacted by parental incarceration. We'll talk about that and get more into that. But this has been a great start to our 2022, and I thank you so much for being here, and everyone have a great night.
It was a pleasure to participate. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you to all of you and what you do. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.